So first, I'd like to thank the team of the Czech Republic Global Compact for their kind invitation. And I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, that I am really glad to be here this afternoon to share some visions about the evolution of the climate. Okay. I know that you are all familiar, of course, with the 10 principles of the Global Compact. I show this slide only to emphasize the fact that there are 3 principles regarding climate into those 10 principles. So 3 fairly important for the business. The first one is a precautionary approach to environmental challenges by companies. Second, initiatives necessary to promote greater responsibility towards the environment. And the third principles regarding environment is to encourage the development and diffusion of new technologies. Okay? So, as you know, the problems with environment are many. The growing scarcity of natural resources, the increase of pollution, the increase of waste, the decline of biodiversity, and the climate change. And I think that all those problems are related, as we have already seen, to the fast-growing population of our planet. You know, today we are 7 million. When I was born, we were, I don't know, a few thousands. In 2050, we will be 9-10 billion. So that's something which has to be handled. Okay, so regarding the climate change, you know that the climate is changing, and it is due to the accumulation into the atmosphere of greenhouse gas. And there is no time to waste. Being optimistic, I would say that we still have time to prevent the worst impacts of this climate change. What are those impacts? There are many. For example, flooding, droughts, mass migration, disappearing of small islands into the Pacific Ocean due to the sea level elevation. So a lot of problems are here, and those problems are for tomorrow. So it is urgent to reach a global, transparent agreement between states, business, civil society, in order to curb this climate change. And this was the ambition of the COP21, which, as you know, took place in Paris last December. Okay, so Paris, Tour Eiffel, of course. And first, a little bit of history, because I don't know whether all of you are familiar with what we call COP. And I will say a few words about UNFCCC, for United Nations, as you can read, Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this is an environmental treaty which was signed, which was negotiated in 1992 and signed in 1994 by 196 countries, which are called the parties, okay? And the objective of this treaty being to stabilize the greenhouse gas content of the atmosphere in order to prevent dangerous consequences for life in general and for human life in particular on Earth. But this treaty is not binding, and there is no enforcement mechanism. And we will see that this is a problem regarding all the climate questions. So those parties which signed this UNFCCC have met annually since 1995 in what is called COPs, Conference of Parties. So the first one was in 1995, and the 21st one was in Paris in 2015. So those COPs take place annually. The next one will take place in Morocco, in Marrakesh, at the end of this year. Two outstanding COPs. The Kyoto COP produced a legally binding protocol regarding the reduction of greenhouse gas emission by developed countries. Okay, so this protocol was supposed to apply to 37 developed countries, but more than 100 countries in development were not included into this protocol. And what is interesting is that in the Kyoto Protocol, China or India were not involved. Okay? So this protocol went not really well. In 2001, the United States decided not to sign it. Okay? And in 2011, Canada decided to withdraw from the protocol because China and India were not involved. So this protocol has been extended until 2020 in Doha, in a COP which took place a few years ago. So this protocol did not work well. What was it? It was fairly easy. The developed countries should decrease by 5% their greenhouse gases emission with reference to the year 1990. So it was fairly easy, but apparently it didn't work. Another COP which was interesting was the Cancun COP in 2010, and for the first time, one COP stated that the elevation of the temperature, the average temperature of the globe should not increase by more than 2 degrees Celsius in order to prevent big accidents, big consequences. Okay, so you have here the location of the COPs. The first one in Berlin, you see, on the upper left, and the last one in Paris. They took place all around the world. And of course, the Global Compact is really involved in COPs. Not only the UN Global Compact, but also the local networks. And as in Paris we had last year, COP21, we felt in Global Compact France that it was necessary to do something before. And we organized, with another organization called Entreprises pour l'Environnement, we organized a summit in Paris in May, 1 year ago, with Brice Lalonde, who is a former Minister of Environment of France, and we call this summit Business and Climate Summit. And it was, to our surprise, a big success, you know. We organized it in UNESCO, and we had more than 2,000 people. We had the President of the French Republic, a lot of ministers, CEOs from all around the world. And the purpose of this Business and Climate Summit was fairly simple. We know, it has been told this morning, that business is part of the problem by the emission. But we wanted to show that business first recognized its responsibility, and second, that business would be part of the solution. And this was really important because it is not obvious, you know. And so, another point, considering the success of this first Business and Climate Summit, we will organize a second one in London this year in June. So, if by any chance you're in London at the end of June, you know, nice city, nice weather, for sure, you can attend the BCS number 2. And I will say also a few words about caring for climate. Caring for Climate is an initiative which was launched by the UN Global Compact in 2007, and UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, and UNFCCC in order to promote the action of business against climate change. Okay, and Caring for Climate was an important player of COP21. All I am saying now is just to show you that business is now greatly involved into this climate change battle. Okay, so COP21. What was the results? What were the results of COP21? I can say that there are 4 main points. The first one is important because the first day of the summit, 120 heads of states gathered in Paris. You know, after the bombing, unfortunately, we had 2 weeks ago. So it was, you know, a demonstration of political willingness at the highest level. Second one, and this is also important, COP21 reached an agreement approved by 190 countries. So that's also something. And in this agreement, third point, really important, there is no more differentiation between developed countries and countries in development. As I explained before, the Kyoto Protocol maybe failed because of this differentiation between 2 categories of countries. In this agreement, in this Paris Agreement, all the countries are involved into the climate battle. And for the first time, there was a quantified commitment regarding CO2 emissions. And this is important. If we continue as today, for your information, last year we estimate that the human activity was responsible for the release of about 35 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere, knowing that the natural environment can absorb a little bit less than 20 gigatons. So that means that 15 gigatons last year were released in the atmosphere, are still in the atmosphere, increasing the greenhouse effect. So if we continue, in 2030, on the same trend, the forecast will be 55 gigatons of emissions of greenhouse gas. And so the quantification of the target into the Paris Agreement is 40, which is something. And more than that, the agreement is looking for a balance between emission and absorption in 2050. That means that in 2050, we should not emit more than 20 gigatons of greenhouse gas per year. Okay? So this agreement was approved in Paris. It was signed last week, or it was April 22nd, in the UN by 175 states. And I think that since 2 or 3 more states have signed this agreement. But this is not the end of the story, because it is signed, but now it has to be ratified by countries before being operational. And this can take, I would say, 1-2 years. We don't know for sure. It depends on the countries, it depends on the laws of the countries, and so on. But still, so it has been approved, signed, but not yet ratified. So it's still pending, I would say. Okay, in this agreement, there are 2 voluntary commitments which are important. Every state a big one or a really small one, a powerful one, a rich one or a poor one, is committed to set up a program which is called INDC, for Intended Nationally Determined Contributions. Okay? So that's what the state will do in order to reduce the energy consumption and to reduce the CO2 emissions. And every 5 years, this program has to be reviewed and improved. And in order to meet the target of, we do not say anymore 2 degrees, but 1.5 degrees of average increase of the temperature. Why 1.5? Because we realized, the last models, that if it is 2 degrees, still some states, some islands in the Pacific Ocean, as Maldives, Tonga, and so on, will disappear. So that's a real problem. Parts of Bangladesh also. So that's a real problem of survival for those countries. And these commitments are not binding, but they require transparency and cooperation mechanism between states. So, and the business. So the business is really mobilized. And there is an initiative which is called the Agenda of Solution, or Lima Paris Action Agenda. And this Agenda of Solution was launched in Lima in COP20 in Peru. And it consolidates initiatives taken by business and also by non-state actors, as communities, cities, private investors, and so on. And today, about a third, that means 700, amongst the 2,000 biggest companies in the world are engaged into this agenda of solutions. And those companies, they want to show that their engagement is a strong one, a true one, a transparent one. I would say that there is a question which was not solved, and that's a really difficult one during COP21. This is the question of CO2 pricing, carbon tax. Should we tax the CO2 emission at which level? There was discussions about that during COP21 at the highest level, but no agreement. Okay, and this agenda of solution is materialized, if I may say so, by a platform, a web platform, which is called NASCA, for Non-State Actor Zone for Climate Action. And on this NASCA platform, you can go on your computer, look at this platform and see that there are already more than 11,000 commitments registered. And those commitments are voluntary commitments. So that means that there is really something going on. Okay, so what can we do as a local network of the Global Compact? So we consider the situation in France, and we consider that the big companies in France, as demonstrated this morning by Manuel, for example, for Total, they are on the right track, you know. They know what to do, they know why they do it. But the problem is with the small and medium-sized companies. Very often, they don't feel really concerned by the problem of climate, you know. I have my small company, 10 persons in the middle of nowhere. I do not care about the climate change because I do not feel it. So we started an action in direction of those small companies. And this action was the creation of a club that we called SMEs, small and medium-sized companies, and climate. And in order to show to those SMEs that not only the climate is a problem, but that the solution to the climate problem can be an opportunity of business, an opportunity for better business, an opportunity for reviewing the processes of production, and that it can be, at the end of the day, beneficial to the company. And for that, we started this year what we call a Tour de France, and the first meeting took place yesterday in Lyon, which is the second city of France, with a big success, and a large number of small and medium-sized companies gathered in order to consider all those problems. So I will conclude by saying that we are entering a new era of business. It cannot be anymore business as usual, but business environmentally friendly will be, I would say, one of the keys for a future profitable business. Thank you.